Brain Bounce by M.R.M. Dark, Chapter 2, Time Travel, Branes, and Quantum Foam. The universe is a mysterious place, and man has often struggled to understand it. He has striven to know his place in it, and to know about how it all came to be. One man had directed his efforts to understand the universe in a more fruitful way than any yet before him. That man was Garth. As he pondered the great questions and gathered together the pieces of the puzzle, he planned new approaches to solve problems that eluded him. As he worked, collecting the facts and figures he needed, he got closer to perfecting a science that would change humanity forever. The nature of mind, of mere existence, and the creation of all things, in this or any reality, was the subject of his researches. Could a cloud of probabilities be a real universe, if no one was there to observe it? He knew that the entire universe existed as an undefined waveform until observed or measured. He also knew the measurement in some cases resulted in a phenomenon called quantum entanglement. Other than work at the two institutions he was a member of, he had no human entanglements. Sometimes he wished that were not the case, but his work kept him far too busy for much of that anyway, so he worked at his notes and data organization. The exact times of the brain collisions are not the same in each brain. Brain B's far future can collide with our past, present, future, vice versa. Atlantis and Lemuria are examples of physical transfer of their future into our past. The Bermuda Triangle, etc., are examples of the opposite. Some UFOs are from their future. Man himself may be descended partly from them. In a few places, physical space and time in the individual brains mix together so that a temporary third reality forms. These are sometimes experienced as vivid dreams. Sometimes a gateway to knowledge of the future opens up in these dreams. These dreams were quantum jumping, not using a machine, just mind to switch brains. There are many times more cells in your body than there are stars in the sky. The universe contains some very exotic substances, such as neutronium, and substances that can only be made, e.g., Bose-Einstein condensates. Bose-Einstein condensates were predicted in 1924-25 and made by Eric Cornell and Carl Weinman in 1995 at the University of Colorado, Boulder. A soliton is a self-reinforcing solitary wave that maintains its shape while it travels at constant speed. First observed by John Scott Russell before 1882. He observed a wave at Union Canal in Scotland and described it, he was the first to do so, as a wave of translation. Two solitons in a bound state is a bion. Our galaxy is on a collision course with the Andromeda galaxy. They will pass right through each other peacefully in about 3 billion years. When galaxies collide, dark matter and dark energy associated with these individual galaxies play a role in maintaining cohesion in each one. Bions can be composed of widely separated solitons. A quantum mechanical relationship can be established at an early time in the universe. This is called quantum entanglement. The brain regions associated with each galaxy collide long before the physical galaxies collide, exchanging solitons and dark energy and mass. In the third brain created when brains collide, there is a dream world where dark solitons crash into our world, maintaining a flat universe. Let's call the part of our brain associated with our galaxy Brane A, and call the part of our brain associated with Andromeda Brane B. Garth Wallace looks up from the notes he is composing for his lecture on brain dynamics and time travel, wearily squinting out the window. He is Dr. Garth Wallace, PhD actually, graduate of MIT and head of the Dr. R.E. Wembley, deceased, synchrotron expansion project, Chalk River. Born in 2028 in Vancouver, BC, he is in charge of one of the most intense programs ever researching particle physics. Early universe. Dr. Roger Ellis Wembley, his deceased mentor, has recently killed himself performing the very experiment he must now continue. In essence, the experiment involves a feedback loop, the world's fastest computer, and standing waves. A mysterious ball of energy forms. The energy is believed to be a form of the Higgs boson particle, manifesting as a time traveler inside its own wormhole. All the data is bad. The particles seem not to be Higgs bosons at all, but some more massive particle. Then an even more massive version of the particle is found. Garth continues making research notes. Dark solitons are coming to flatten the universe. Our hero, Dr. Garth Wallace, is heir to his mentor's BC lab at Triumph Synchrotron Extension Building, UBC. He also has a tank in a mine. The mine is drained periodically to work on equipment and is located 2 kilometers down in Nanaimo, BC. There is a sub down at the tank as well, for working on equipment when the tank is full. The tank is 5 kilometers tall and the size of 3 or 4 basketball courts. The experiment is carried out on 2 scales, one large and one small. A particle counter scans the relationships between branes and live in space. A particle is emitted, travels through a conduit to a vacuum chamber, is absorbed by the detector, is re-emitted, and sent back to the emitter to be counted. Each time the cycle completes, the amplitude increases in the emitter. The whole arrangement is a form of a reflex klystron. It uses a Higgs particle. The particle field remains as a single particle of greater and greater mass. A bubble of energy is seen to form around the emitter tube. Garth remembers ordering a detailed examination of data from sensors placed around the emitter tube. Those results should be ready now. He picks up his office phone and punches the speed dial button for the analysis results. "Hi, IT here," is the response. "What's the scoop on those sensors?" he asks quickly. "Weird slew rotating around, not the range we expected at all," comes the response. "What, higher, lower?" "Way higher." "What's this slew?" "It looks like a partial shielding and rotating exposure." "What, of a Higgs?" "No, something massive. It looks like twice the signature." "So this looks like Dr. Wembley's mystery particle." "Yes, it looks like the first phase of a higher order field, all right. Could be the one." "The emitter tube resonates at the fundamental for a Higgs." "Yeah, the fundamental is the same when we feed the protons in from the synchrotron." Garth hangs up and returns to his notes. A Higgs particle is produced when the reflex klystron is resonated at a very high frequency. Details. Why have attempts to produce a beam of Higgs particles failed? Dr. Wembley's experiment exploded because of a jump in resonance by twice the frequency. The idea of Hazer radar to map brane relationships in 11 space was not a new one, but the traditional view was that it was not possible for man. Little did Garth know that Hazer beam radar constantly maintain a map of 11 space for the beings at the other end of time in the foamiverse. In the far future, in a brane close by, the foamy nature of the Planck scale of the universe is collected into a pile. It is the foamiverse. One citizen of the foam universe is now Dr. Roger Ellis Wembley. He is aware that in the normal sense he must be dead. Dr. R.E. Wembley is certain that he is not a ghost, in a version of the afterlife, or having a dream. He now has had time to communicate with his fellow citizens and has come to the conclusion that he has undergone destructive teleportation. His original body was destroyed January 21st, 2060, at the same time a copy arrived here. He remembers his accident and thoughts at the time. He was in the Triumph lab he directed, examining the waveguide and cavity on the reflex klystron detector. The setup was to take nearly light-speed protons and form a coherent beam that excites a target to a very high resonant frequency. Each proton arrives at a very short time after the last one, at a precisely regular interval. The energy in the feedback loop is monitored at the detector and frequency measured at the emitter. A supercomputer controls the feedback loop adjustments and displays system data. A bubble of energy forms around the emitter and grows. He thinks about the roots of technical details he is modifying and examining. When he discovered the nature of the bubble back in 2030, the more massive Higgs field predicted were found. These energies were about 10% of what he would use today. Examinations of all the terabytes of data led to proof of the other branes in 2032. The path to higher energy experiments was very dangerous. In 2056 experiment, when he found the reason, he was nearly killed. If he had not guessed correctly that bions were forming between the particle field in his experiment and a remote location, and brought in some modifications, the revised computer model predicted an explosion. Haunted by strange predictive dreams, it terrified him nightly. His dreams lately involved explosions and confusing scenarios in which he held godlike powers and glimpses of his future. A vast plain was below him, as he flew naked through space. A dark cloud of black objects speeding past him in the opposite direction nearly hit him. He pondered the numbers in his head, worried now. What if there was an even higher field concentration possible? What if his mods were not enough? Some theories predicted 5 distinct Higgs field masses. He had only allowed for the first 3. He had only planned on working at energies of Higgs, massive Higgs type 1, and massive Higgs type 2. Now he was certain some of the numbers were wrong. Was the energy going up at regular intervals or as a log function? A major blunder. The moment of the explosion blurs past in his memory with a flash of light, a sense of duality, of being 2 places at once in a wormhole. The wormhole formed as seen from his present location, a view of his damaged lab inside. He remembers turning away from the collapsing hole. As he turned away from the destruction, he grasped his situation. He is a soliton. The universe is eternal. He is eternal. Every brane was nearby. Every brane is adjacent to this one. Each idea, quality, and outcome is a reality bubble here. Platonic ideals. No one dies here. Nothing does. Dr. Garth works for a bit longer on his lecture notes and takes a short break. The ability for a mid-energy level experiment to create a Higgs particle is a contentious point among theoretical physicists in 2063. Experimental results conflict with accepted theories. The theory of everything predicts correctly the energies of Higgs creation in the CERN experiment, but not the appearance of the Higgs at lower energies as found by Dr. R.E. Wembley. The frequency of resonance is found accidentally in 2030 when working on a new version of quantum supercomputer used to control a proton beam at a large synchrotron. Analysis of interference patterns inside the computer led to the discovery. The window in which the Higgs appears is a tiny variation in the frequency when the proton beam that resonates in the emitter tube is composed of coherent particles. They all have the same phase angle just as photons in a laser do. The energy bubble forms after the experiment has been running for an extended time period. The theory is that the phenomenon is a wormhole with a massive Higgs particle inside. In 11 space, the particle is the shape of a 2D torus membrane with a second hole, which expands until the entire brane turns inside out. The part of the particle in 4D space-time is the edge of the second hole. It can physically appear, disappear, and move in space, etc., due to this shape change. The shape of the Higgs membrane is complex enough to be very confusing to new students. It can be described as a 2D object, since it has no thickness. Yet it forms a 3D hollow shape. In cross-section, it resembles a donut with a bite taken out of it. Another source of confusion is the word brane itself. Most people associate it with the well-known discovery of other dimensions by Dr. Garth's mentor, Dr. R.E. Wembley. But the word is also used to describe the Planck scale form of virtual particles and also used to illustrate the shape of Higgs particles seen in 11 space. Even an experienced theoretical physicist like Garth feels this confusion sometimes. Is there something in this besides semantics? Maybe I'm missing something here. Dr. R.E. Wembley. Dr. Roger is a confused traveler. Lately, in his new world order, things have seemed stale. He is aware that the likelihood of his forming a bion with one of the locals is diminishing. He notes that most of the local solitons in a bion pair seem to remember having always been in a pair, and new ones were rare. His explorations had led him into many a nook and cranny of the Foamiverse and several alternative states of being. One place that stood out was like a vast city set amid a starry sky of bubble universes. Each bubble was the plateau stage of an ancient and wise alien civilization, cheating annihilation at the end of time inside its own singularity, and the city a meeting place for all of them. The tapestry of alien shapes and sizes was bewildering. Cultures clashed and toes were stepped on unapologetically. He found himself witnessing a vast ocean of extraterrestrial beings, and still being all alone, separate. He found out about a race of aliens that felt just like he did all the time. They bred seldom went out, kept to themselves, were loners. The Greys. The Greys. Advanced technology allows them to do marvelous things. They are the oldest race in the universes. They also are the most numerous. They reside in several galactic superclusters less than 3 billion light-years from the exact center of the universe. Most of them are hiding inside a vast singularity plastered into the foam. A universe-wide chain of eateries is named after them. The plot to overthrow a vast galaxy-wide civilization for the benefit of its own citizens has just recently, comparatively speaking, been foiled by them. They see no evil, speak no evil. On a vast desert planet ruled by giant sandworms, they carry out strange, hallucinogenic experiments on themselves to dominate space and time itself. They thought of that already, whatever it is. They are old. As old as the red Martian sun, older really, that compels them to rock you completely. They are on a 5-year mission from their homeworld. One of the crew is named Scotty. Alien robots with one eye that moves constantly have come from space to conquer their world. A strange montage of kaleidoscopic vignettes flows across the stage of their story, coupled to the meaning of the intricate body art displayed by the protagonist. Almost anything could be attributed to the Greys. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, they chose the Grey side of the Force. They built a vast ring of material around their home star. They like dragons and unicorns and puns. They have strange powers and can see into the future. They have hairy toes. They have wonderful eyes. The process to become a Grey or any other race of alien was simple. The candidate went to the bubble universe and underwent destructive teleportation to a special orientation area. When he materializes at the life skills camp, for his new race, he is in the form of his new identity. He was Roger the Grey. Roger the alien. Roger the Grey. One day, not long after going Grey, Roger noticed that he was missing something. Life is endlessly dull. Time weighs heavily upon him. He is bored and listless. The others studiously avoid him. The secrets of the universe are open to him, yet he feels no satisfaction. He decides to take a trip around the universe in his faster-than-light, saucer-shaped craft. The tour is going great until he is sucked up by a wormhole and spit out too close to a blue and white planet. He was losing control as his saucer flies into the atmosphere and glows brightly. Explosions pepper his small craft. The control panel goes dead and he falls like a rock out of the sky, skidding to a stop in a hilly area near a small gully. Looking outside, he decides to create some clones of himself to use as decoys. Once they are ready, he becomes invisible and waits. Soon a curious farmer, having seen the crash, follows the skid marks across the ravine and to the ship. Seeing the hatch has popped open, he sticks his head inside to take a look. Terrified by what he sees, he screams and runs away. Hours pass. A convoy of trucks can be heard in the distance. Later, soldiers shouting orders and talking on handheld radios. A soldier pokes his head through the opening and yells to his fellows, "We got a couple dead ones inside." The commanding officer inspects the contents briefly and orders the hatch sealed. After a while, the sounds change to heavy machinery. A crane is hooked up to lift the saucer onto the back of a flatbed. After 20 minutes on the road, the hatch is opened inside a large building on an army base close by. This is where Roger makes his escape. Using his two-way wrist radio, Roger opens a wormhole and steps inside. "See you on TV later, suckers," he yells before it closes.